beginning our August 5th workshop. And first on the agenda are a couple of acknowledgements. And the first acknowledgement we have this evening is from the Special Olympics. So would our guests from Little Feet, Special Olympics, please come forward. Come on up so we can
See them.
And please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you're going to be acknowledging today.
Hi, I'm Isabel Shepard, and I've been teaching in the Virginia Beach schools, well, when I met Dottie in 1983, back at Thorogood. And I've got 4 kids that went to Trentwood Elementary and Great Neck Middle School, and they graduated from Cox High School, and all 4 of them swam for the Powerhouse Cox team with Coach Gentry, who instilled in them a sense that achievement in sports and academics both were really important.
Move over just a little bit so we can see you.
And this is Megan Shepard, my daughter, and she is a global messenger now for Special Olympics. She was in the recent Special Olympics World Games, and these are some of the pictures. This is one picture that I really like. Team USA was behind Team China by 2 pool lengths, and Megan dove in doing the butterfly part of the 4x100 medley relay and decreased that to 1 pool length, and then our freestyler brought it home, and we ended up winning the gold. Ooh. China thought they had it in bag. So this is the medal picture, and they were showing how they were really upset that they did not pull this off. So I just wanted to say that Special Olympics has given Megan and many other intellectually disabled individuals the opportunity to do something like participate in the World Games in an international competition, which would be unheard of if it weren't for the Special Olympics. And she is a global messenger, and she has a message that she would like to share with you. Go ahead.
Welcome, Megan.
Hi. I'm Megan Shepard, and I'm a global messenger for Special Olympics. I want to thank you, Dr. Spence, for leading the Athlete Oath and for your support and enthusiasm at the first annual Little Feet Meet at Tollwood High School. We are overjoyed that you will be partnership with Special Olympics to grow bigger and better. We are excited to bring inclusive track and field teams to Virginia Beach. Bayside High will be participating in Champions Together, and we look forward to other high schools joining us. Project Unify will continue to promote inclusion and acceptance. If we can unite on the playing field, we can change the game for all of us. We should all accept each other for who we are, not what we are.
Thank you, Megan.
And again, I just wanted to say thank you for participating with Special Olympics. All the individuals who participate with Special Olympics in any way, shape, or form could end up, at an international competition, state games, national games, etc. So getting their foot in the door in elementary school is a big step forward. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next,
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, if I could make a comment too for you. Whether you realize or not, and you've also been a long time involved with this. You sponsor at Ocean Lakes High School, sponsors the fall championships for Special Olympics. On there, you also sponsor the local tournament. Some of you have been involved at Plaza Middle School for well over about 25 years, so you have a long-term involvement. So if you're interested, their tournaments will be back out, and there's plenty of opportunities for you to come out for the Special Olympics tournaments in the fall.
Thank you. I wanted to, I know some of the board, this is the first time we've ever done any acknowledgements like this at the beginning of our workshops, and I just want to let you know that I just felt this was so important. I wanted them to be on TV, and because our guidelines kind of are specific as to who we acknowledge on the TV portion of our formal meeting, it kind of prohibited us from having this acknowledgement in the formal meeting because it wasn't part of our agenda. So I just felt this was so important. I wanted the public to be able to hear this and see this as well. So that's why I moved this and invited them to come for our workshop. And the same goes for the United Way campaign. Are they here?
Yeah, right over here.
Oh, would you all like to come forward? And we've invited them to come also.
So good evening. My name is Kurt Hoflick. I'm the United Way Board Vice Chair and also the President of Centerra Norfolk General Hospital. And I'm here this evening as a volunteer on behalf of a very grateful community to say thank you. The City of Virginia Beach Public Schools leads this community, the region, and the state in so many accomplishments. We are here tonight to acknowledge yet another way that this school system sets the pace and the example for others. We count on all of you to educate our children, but you do so much more than that. Last year, your teachers contributed $284,675 to the United Way campaign.
Wow.
And even more impressive, the students. The students generated $54,852 in donations for the United Way. I think that's just amazing. You are doing so much more than educate. You're building tomorrow's good citizens by acknowledging and modeling generosity, and also by giving the opportunity for our students to come alongside and participate in the campaign. Over the last 5 years, your teachers and students have given over $1.9 million to benefit this community. This means a lot of people have counted on you to help them through a very rough time, and you have been there. So on behalf of all of them and the community, I want to say thank you. And I'd like to offer some special recognition for Eileen Cox and her team, who have generated the organization around the campaign and ran just a fabulous organized campaign this year. And also for Dr. Spence, who serves as a United Way board member, and thank you for your leadership on the board. And with that, I have a plaque here, a little presentation I can give to Dr. Spence. And
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And our third acknowledgement is not here yet. They're running late, so I think we'll move on right now to the professional learning focus. Dr. Spence, would you introduce our next segment about teacher professional learning focus for 2017-18?
Yeah, and I think that's all of the introduction that's required. We have Dr. Cashwell here, who is going to talk to us about what we will be looking at during the course of this upcoming school year with our teachers.
Just transition us here. It's waking up. Nope.
Whoops.
This may be loaded for the next.
Right. Oh, he's here.
Oh, did you want to?
Yeah,
Did you want to that?
We'll go ahead. Come on up. Come on, Mr. Rosen.
It's all right. I'll pull it right back up.
So our next acknowledgement has to do with a project that we did called the Mermaid Project and we did this in conjunction with Virginia Beach Middle School, and I'll turn this right over to Mr. Rosenfeld.
Okay, thank you for having me. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. Hopefully I didn't keep anybody waiting. So first of all, I want to say this project was with McCleskey. So Cheryl McCleskey unfortunately had a board meeting out of town, so she's not here. So she wanted me to convey to you, how excited she was for the project, and sorry that she couldn't be here today. But I'll walk you guys through this. So basically, how do I advance this?
There's a clicker right there where you can advance with the arrow.
So the idea we had for this project is really probably like most things, we sit around at lunch and, start thinking about stuff, right? So, as you can see here, this is the Mermaid, this is at Rudy Inlet. This is what it looked like a couple years ago now. And Cheryl had purchased this as a fundraiser, forget exactly which one, and had it installed, in cement, sitting there, and it's at Rudy Inlet. And this isn't a great image of it, but if you are on the Mermaid looking out, you're looking right out at Rudy Inlet, right to the ocean. So I always say it's like our Statue of Liberty, right? It's greeting everybody that comes in. And she was just saying at lunch, isn't there something we could do with this? I mean, I feel like I've bought this as a charitable donation, and we're not really doing anything with it. So we said it'd be cool to come up with a name for the Mermaid and kind of a story behind it, and try to do something more with it. But rather than the three of us, it was her son and I there with her coming up with that. I wonder if we could, Cheryl loves, the students, kids, and how could we get the schools involved? And so we ended up going through a lot of different places, so we had a lot of people to thank, but we met with Ann Wolcott, and we eventually met with Dr. Spence, and eventually got to Virginia Beach Middle. And I think I started even with you, Kim, right? I think. Somewhere in there. So we had a lot of different people sort of guiding us and saying, hey, this is kind of a cool idea, what could we do? And so that's sort of where the idea came from. And we
Didn't quite advance. Nope.
Alright, well, click something else.
Yeah, clicker.
Can I get clicking assistance? So we met ultimately with the 3 teachers at Virginia Beach Middle in the Gifted Arts program, and they were just, I can't say enough. I mean, you guys as a school board, us as a city, to have such a great resource there. These 3 teachers were awesome. So we met with them, and they developed a whole plan. And I think what was really exciting to us about this, and I think to the students too, is it turned into a year-long school project as opposed to just one thing. And it integrated creativity in terms of their artwork, in terms of coming up with a name and a story. But it also we brought in history. So people from the Cape Henry Lighthouse, from the Coast Guard station, all came in different sessions to VB Middle, and the students, as you all probably know, have Zero Bell, I think it's called, right? So they're there bright and early, meeting, with some local historians and really learning about, our local history. So how did Rudy Inlet get formed? What was there before, and those types of things all came into it. Here we go.
Keep going.
It just won't get past that slide. So they learned all about that history, and what we decided to do that we thought would be unique was to introduce them to this project. We took them all on a boat out of Rudy Inlet. Here we are. And we met the Mermaid, on December 2nd. So when they got on board the boat here on December 2nd, this was back in 2015, they had no idea what this project was about or what they were doing there, which is what we kind of wanted. We thought it'd be fun. So we, kind of cruised around Rudy Inlet. We went up by the Marine Science Museum and all those things, and kind of came back and then stood out in front and introduced them to the Mermaid and introduced the project, and that the idea would be for them to name her. Somebody would be selected, who came up with a name, and then they would do artwork, and we'd have an art show at the end of the year, and obviously along the way during the school year, as I mentioned, they would have some local history and learn about it to incorporate all of that into their writing assignment and into their artwork. So we thought that was a pretty exciting, it wasn't just a singular piece, it was, had multiple aspects to it. So as you saw, I had a number of pictures there, as you can see in the corner there. It's okay.
I see.
This stuff happens all the time. So they, got to go on the boat. I think that the students had a great time. It was kind of a great kickoff, to it. And then, as I said, we did the local history part. And then that ended in June. We had, right before the school year ended, we had a art show at Waterman's. On the second level, they have sort of a separate, event room. So we had a lot of the students show up with their families, which was great. Cheryl made a contribution to, there's a specific scholarship fund associated with Virginia Beach Middle's art program. So we made a contribution there. And we displayed all the students' artwork, which was, blew us away. It's amazing how talented they are. Here we go. So this is, back on the
Meeting.
vote back in December. There we go. So this is, I wanted you all, I don't have pictures of every single piece of artwork, but this is just an example of some of them, which was awesome.
I do too. I do too. That's my favorite.
Let's see, there we go. So on June 21st, then we had this art show, and we weren't the judges of the art show because we're not skilled enough to do that. But the teachers did that and handled that part of it. And then we selected the name. So the name was Ocean Spirit, and a story went along with Ocean Spirit. So we didn't just select the name from just a list of names. We read 20 different stories, and these stories were incredible. They weren't a half a paragraph or something like that. These were pages, multiple pages of creative writing, I guess, because they could kind of take it anywhere, and a lot of them got really in depth. So it was pretty exciting. So this is Lila McKendry, who's now I think at First Colonial, and she won. So she, in terms of the naming, and also I think she won some of the artwork in terms of the art show as well. Several of those were hers. And this was Ryan. He also came up with, we had another category which is more of a sticker, so it was a smaller piece of artwork, and then we've sold some of those stickers. We had them produced, and we've sold some of them down at the Virginia Beach Fishing Center, where we're able to take some of the proceeds and put them back to the scholarship. The idea was hopefully to catch on to where we could eventually get this into other places and sell, so the scholarship had a way to kind of generate income on an ongoing basis. And we also had a reporter from the Beacon there, Lee Belote, who wrote a great story about it. So it was in the Beacon, so it got, people kind of knew about it. So it was a cool way to do it. What else do we have? So then to culminate with all this, we thought it would be fun. We wanted to build a base to the mermaid, so she looked a little better than, now she had a name and identity than just a pole. But we wanted to put a plaque up on the base that outlined the program that this was done and all the people that were involved in it. So, as I mentioned, Ann Wolcott and Dr. Spence and Mrs. Melnick and Mrs. Anderson, I guess in a formal school setting I should say that, right? And then these teachers, as I said, Leah Kruger, Jessica Provo, and Lee Drake, and I think Lee's at a different school now, but they were just tremendous in making all of this happen and really putting a lot of thought and planning to this to make it as great as can be. So this is the actual plaque. I did this so you can see on the next pictures because it's hard to see in the pictures and read it. But then Premier Millwork was kind enough to donate all the materials and design it and put it and install this base. So this is a bench, so it's kind of hard to see in the picture, but it's big enough to where people can sit there on the bench and sturdy enough for that. We painted it bright pink, that's Cheryl's signature color, and installed the plaque there. So the idea and what we told Elijah when she won is, 40 years from now or 50 years from now, this mermaid's still going to be there. She can hopefully take her kids and stuff and say, hey, I did this project. She's called Ocean Spirit and I named her. So,
Right.
And that was the project.
That's cool.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenfeld. So that completes our acknowledgments, and I thank you all for coming. I appreciate it so much. It was good to see you. So next on to our professional learning.
And hopefully the technology jinx is lifted. We have a frozen, screen here. Okay, hope for the best. So As Dr. Spence and Mrs. Anderson alluded to, this presentation is meant to cover really an overview of what the focus of the 2 job-embedded professional learning days will be for this coming school year. As you know, the board approved a calendar which had 2 days dedicated to professional learning. So we'll spend a minute taking a look at what schools will be doing during those 2 days, how we'll engage our teachers really in learning that's meant to help them enable the ability to transform the experience for students, particularly by fostering student agency. And we'll spend a few moments looking at why we landed on that as a focus for our professional learning. So of course, as with everything, our focus for the professional learning, as with anything we do in the school division, is tightly aligned to our strategic plan, and particularly in this case, when we think about goal 2, and particularly that item around personalized learning for students, this idea of transforming the experience for students and fostering student agency are really meant to help us move forward with goal 2, strategy 1. You may also recall, I know at the school board retreat, you received a copy of the strategic action agenda for the upcoming year, which is really our way of providing schools kind of a bite-sized chunk of what we're going to work on this year for the entire strategic plan, right? So as we work at accomplishing those goals in Compass 2020, what areas will we need to spend particular focus on? And of course, this is one of the action agenda items that was outlined, and so that was a natural place for us to begin taking this action item and saying, well, how can we really further this from the division standpoint for schools this year? And so that led us to focusing in on that for the teacher professional learning. So you may recall in the spring of the last school year, I spent some time talking to you about the concept of transformational learning and how that's really a foundational piece when we talk about personalizing experiences for students. And I let you know that schools engaged in some readiness work where we asked them to reflect on their own readiness to transform learning experiences for students. And we asked them to reflect on some aspects of leadership. We asked them to reflect on the readiness of teachers, of the community, and we kind of said there are these 5 things that all have to happen in regards to transformational learning, and of course the student piece is one of them. But when we asked schools to reflect, we really wanted them to think about these dispositions of student around the student owning the learning. And so we asked schools to reflect on whether students could do things in these 3 broad categories that make up our student disposition. 1, how well are students able to self-assess and set goals regarding their learning? So in other words, when we talk about putting kids in the driver's seat, this is what we mean, that they understand where they are in relation to learning targets and standards that are presented, and that they understand what they may need to do to help reach those targets if they're not meeting them. And then we also wanted schools to reflect on how well they were providing opportunities for students to demonstrate mastery, not only in the core content areas, but also in those globally competitive skills that are outlined here. And then furthermore, were students being provided opportunities to collaborate using digital tools when appropriate, not only to support their own learning, but their learning of others. And you may also recall that I shared the broad data for that. So when we asked schools to reflect on that aspect of the student disposition last school year, this was the data we collected. So this let us know that you can see the blue category is emerging. Schools still knew this was an area that they really wanted to focus on, and really that they had a lot of growth to do in this area. And that we also had some exemplars and some folks who were really feeling proficient in that area, and we knew we'd be able to leverage them as resources to help other schools as they prepare to move forward with the learning and the student disposition. So knowing that we had that focus area and we wanted to continue that work on our strategic action agenda, we of course had a summer administrative conference, which many of you heard about. Dr. Robertson led a team of really cross-departmental work to pull off what was an outstanding conference. And one element of that conference was also to sort of set the stage for this focus of teacher professional learning for the upcoming year. So while the audience was primarily administrators, we also invited larger school teams to include instructional staff. So we asked administrators to bring along, in some cases, up to 5 instructional staff members to attend alongside them. And so the school teams of instructional staff alongside administrators had 2 days of amazing learning that was really centered around transformational learning broadly, but also through the keynote and some other pieces of the conference really had the opportunity to really reflect on those elements of the student disposition that I just showed you. And so again, that really kind of gave those teams the background knowledge and set the stage for the professional learning focus that will happen this school year on those 2 calendar embedded professional learning days. So one of the things we spent time talking about at the conference, and we tried to build some context around, was this notion that we may need to reflect on our own mindsets about students and about students in the classroom, and really tried to hone our thinking around the idea of students as individuals, and recognizing that oftentimes we can get caught up in teaching to the middle and not the edges, and recognizing that every student is different. We also took a look at some of our preconceived notions that research has debunked, right? This idea that there's really no perfect way to the path you aspire to. If you want to head to a 4-year college, that doesn't mean you must do X, Y, Z first. That those paths may look very different for different people. That there's not a career path that has one straight trajectory. There might be a common trajectory, but there are lots of ways to get there, and none of those is the right way. This notion around character traits, oftentimes we think about stereotypes, right? About if you're really good at sports, then maybe you're not as strong in learning or academic, and just challenging our notions around the idea that we don't want to ever fall prey to some of those mindsets that can cause us not to really hone in on students as individuals. So again, we spent time examining those mindsets, and then we asked school teams to really reflect and ponder on their own for a few minutes about how they might design to the edges, right, and not to the center. How do they design experiences that meet individual student needs and that really nurture individual potential? The school teams also spent a moment really reflecting on this concept of standardization versus standards. And this came to light because when we asked the school teams to reflect on how might you design to the edges, most teams brought up the idea is you can't have a standard approach for every student, right? That different students need different things. We can't standardize the way we present material. We can't standardize the way we expect students to master things. But that doesn't mean we ought to get rid of standards. So there's this notion that we spent a few moments talking about some misconceptions around just because we don't want to standardize something or an experience for students that we're somehow moving away from standards. So we talked about the importance of having high standards for all students, outcomes for learning that are clear to students, and having those standards and those learning objectives clearly articulated, but making sure that we don't standardize the approach to which we have students working towards those, that we make sure that we are allowing students different pathways to meet the standard, and that we're allowing them some voice in showing their mastery of the standard as well. We also spent a little bit of time reflecting on this notion of individuality. Another thing teams surfaced when they thought about how do we design to the edges, how do we make sure we're nurturing individual potential, was this idea that we do want to recognize students as an individual, and everyone has their own individuality. And so many folks surfaced the idea of, well, we want to make sure we're individualizing instruction for students, meaning it meets their academic readiness. So a lot of times we think about computer programs that will meet a student right where they are academically. And while there's some strength in that, we talked about some of the pitfalls around simply assigning students to a device that will individualize an experience for them. So it might take them through a series of math problems right where they are. And while it's important to create experiences that are truly individualized academically and meet the needs of a student that way, we cannot forget to make room for experiences that foster student individuality. And what research tells us is that when students are interacting with one another, that's helping them develop their own sense as an individual, their own personality, their own individuality. So we want to make sure that we're blending experiences that foster interaction between and among students and between and among teachers and students, so that we're really making sure to nurture individuality and not just individualize experiences for students. So again, that really helped us hone our thinking and mindsets around this notion of personalization. We also spent some time taking another look at this infographic around personalized learning, which I know you all were provided. PGI hosted Design Fellow Tours. Many of you were able to attend, and I know you got a copy of this graphic that really helped you see how the Design Fellows lifted out these important concepts around personalized learning. So we shared that with school teams again and really had them focus for the purposes of the Administrators Conference on this notion of the how. how do we now make this happen in schools? If we understand the what and the why, really focusing on the how, and particularly how are we going to foster student ownership and agency, which is one of those foundational pieces of the personalized learning graphic. So again, that's kind of what led us to this point in the conference where we wanted school teams to realize that even though we were focusing on the student, there are really implications here for the teacher. So while we may outline for you all, you know, the focus of professional learning for those 2 job embedded days is all around student agency, that doesn't mean we're not focusing on teacher practice. So just want to outline for you that we really work with the school teams to understand while the focus is on the student, absolutely, we're looking at elements of the student disposition and then thinking, okay, then what are the implications for the way I plan, the way I teach, and the way I assess students? So helping teachers and administrators see that tight connection between teachers and students. So if you, this is a quick little snapshot of our actual student disposition rubric. And it shows that tight relationship. So here's an example. In the best case scenario, we want our students regularly self-assessing on their learning and reflecting on that to help develop their own personalized learning pathway. But notice those bullets underneath. The student works with the teacher to decide how to acquire information, right? So all of these things that we want to foster for students require specific actions on the part of the teacher. So while our professional learning absolutely was all about the student disposition, we also really were connecting the teacher implications as well. And so I have 2 short video vignettes I'd like to show you that are part of our Teaching and Learning Framework video series. I've shown you a few of those as we've been able to capture some great examples all over our school division. So we know this is happening, and I mentioned before when I showed you the survey data, and some folks said, we're really kind of exemplary in this, or we're really getting proficient in this, and how can we take those lessons and scale them across the division as part of our professional learning plan? And so one way we're doing that is through the video series. So here are 2 examples that I'd like to share with you.
I approach goal setting just as a weekly thing that we do. The kids are very used to it. On Monday morning, they know that they come in, they get unpacked, and then they're going to set goals for the week. This first quarter, I like to just sort of introduce the whole idea of goal setting to them, just coming up with 3 goals for themselves. What kinds of goals do we usually write on Mondays? Nathan, what do we usually do? Personal goal. Jace, what else? A friendship goal. Jordan, what else? A school goal. Today what we're going to do is you're going to pick one of those goals. And what we're going to do today is we're going to think of some action steps. I think it forces them to really reflect on themselves and think about, okay, what is it that I need to work on this week? And by 5th grade, you know, they have tests to prepare for, they have study guides, and they are very aware and are clear on the objectives that we're covering. So I think it just makes them more self-aware of what they need to get done. I want you to get with your partner, share with them the goal that you want to work on this week, and talk it out. What are some ways that you can work on your goal, and then swap? When I have students pair up to share their goals with each other, it just gives them an opportunity to collaborate with a friend and to hear what they're working on. And if their goal isn't specific enough, their friend can maybe catch it and say, well, what about soccer are you going to try to get better at? Or what about social studies are you going to try to focus on?
What kind of goal was that? A school goal? It was a school goal. Mine was a personal goal. A challenge I have about goal setting is that sometimes they're too big and sometimes they're too hard to accomplish. I think about my goal, and whenever it's too hard or too challenging, I think about it and I say, well, that goal was too challenging. Action steps help me with goal setting by giving me some ideas of what to do. It guides me through my goals. I'll go to bed a little bit more early so I can make sure
Okay, so you're gonna get all your bedroom routines early. That way you can get to bed earlier. Okay. In terms of conferencing with students about their goals, it's not something that I can get to every week, and it's not something I can get to with every single person, but I try my best to just at least have a quick chat with the kiddos about what they're working on, especially when I look at their goals and I see something that maybe concerns me, or maybe I didn't know that they were taking part in. For teachers who haven't done goal setting before, I would definitely say don't be afraid. I feel like a lot of times it seems like it's something that's going to take up a good portion of your day, and it doesn't have to. I have found that if I share with them a Google document with a chart, I can at any time go in and look to see what they're working on, and I can see very clearly which kids didn't set a goal for that week. It helps so much to get to know your kids, and I feel like you're a much better teacher when you know what's going on.
Example, a fifth grade teacher, and again, our video series is for teachers by teachers. You can see this teacher was giving advice to other teachers who may want to try some of these things, and while that's certainly not the only way to approach goal setting in the classroom, she's giving some great advice on how she makes it work in her fifth grade classroom. And I'd like to show you a very short video of a middle school teacher sharing some similar advice around the way he tackles that challenge in his classroom as well. And I'd like you to notice the continuum as we really work to begin to set those routines around goal setting in elementary school, and kind of see how the difference moves a bit from the soft skills to more the academic ramifications as students go on to secondary school.
When you get your quizzes back, you're not going to see your grade quite yet. You will see which questions you got wrong, you'll see which questions you got right. And what I want you guys to do is kind of map out where you're at on this continuum. In today's class, you're going to see a balanced approach to assessment. We're going to be beginning by looking at some formative assessment, collecting data on student progress towards our learning goals. And then you're going to see some self-assessment. I use self-assessment as part of my formative assessment process. So students are reflecting on their current progress, identifying their own gaps, their own weaknesses and strengths, and figuring out what they need to do to work towards mastery of learning targets. Through a lot of trial and error, I found out that you have to do a lot of modeling for students. You also can't expect students to have as clear an understanding of your criteria and your expectations for grades as you might have. So you really need to let students know what is the standard for mastery. Let's say that we're filling this out for hypothetical student Billy. Billy did a good job and he got all 5 correct. So if this was Billy's paper, Billy would be highlighting this first section. We're thinking about a retake or a reassessment. We want to focus in on what are all the requirements to register to vote, and then what are all the different ways that we can vote. Does that clear things up a little bit better? I have students fill out a contract, and in that contract they identify which learning targets are still an area of weakness for them. They identify specific skills and content that they might not have demonstrated mastery of yet. And working with me, I approve a process, whether it's coming in for extra help, whether it's making flashcards, completing a study guide, but we set up certain criteria that they need to complete in order to show new learning. When students take on the responsibility of tracking their own progress, and when they play a part of matching up what they know with kind of gaps in terms of what they still need to know, they are way more prepared for summative assessments.
Works really well for him in the formative stages of assessment before kids get to that final summative piece where they're actually tracking their own progress on learning goals. And that's what, again, we mean by we're saying students are in the driver's seat, right? They understand where they are on that map to success and sort of which turns they may need to take to get there and when to leverage the assistance of the teacher. And so again, this idea that while all of these focused on the student and the student goal setting, you can see that direct relationship between the actions of the teacher that enable that to happen in the classroom. So again, by really focusing and honing in on that concept of student agency, that's going to allow us to spend some time on those 2 calendar embedded days. And that's one way as a division we can work to move this strategic action forward. But that's certainly not the only thing we're doing. But today's presentation is really focusing on how those 2 days will enable this. So again, you'll recall that August 29th and October 9th are the 2 days the board set aside in the approved calendar for this school year for teacher professional learning. And again, that focus is around the disposition of students and as of course it relates to the implication of the teacher. So just as a quick overview to remind you in the broader context of professional learning, what we offer for our teachers as they work towards their 22 points for the school year. They spend time earning points really in 3 buckets or from 3 areas. There's division required professional development, site-based, which means at the school, something the administrator designates as a particular need for the building, and then choice strands, and again, all of those working to equal that 22 points. So there's a variety of offerings through our learning catalog, and in every content area you can imagine. It's an incredibly robust offering. But what we're going to focus again on today is this 8 points as it relates to those 2 days. So 4 points have been designated for each of those days. So teachers will accumulate 8 points on those 2 days towards that total requirement that they have for learning. So what will schools be doing on August 29th and October 9th? So again, I told you that time at the admin conference with those school teams was meant to sort of build background and also serve as a runway or a launch pad, if you will, to preparing for those 2 days. So we provided schools team time at the administrative conference, and what they did in those teams is they went back and they reflected again on their own school's data around the student disposition and kind of thought about what is it we want to focus on. Maybe we're farther ahead with goal setting. We want to focus on 5C mastery, or we want to focus on another aspect of the student disposition. As long as we're working towards honing the ability for students to foster agency. And then we gave them a template that they could fill out to show us what their learning progression would be on those 2 days and which area of the student disposition they were choosing to work on as a school. So we wanted them to have some autonomy based on their own readiness, yet have still a central focus. And so we also provided schools a customized resource site, actually, as part of our transformational learning site, where they were able to see some sample plans that we had created in teaching and learning, and then also show them ways they could customize that to meet their own needs. So some ideas of what school plans look like. They were able to see the whole teacher video series, maybe pick 1 or 2 videos they thought would resonate with faculty and staff, have some discussion around some guiding questions, look at some articles, and then what we really wanted was not for the learning to stop at the end of the day on August 29th or on October 9th, but really to be a catalyst for more learning that would happen in the building through their professional learning communities and so on. So schools have done a really nice job thinking about how they'll have a unified focus across those 2 days rather than just focusing on those 2 days in isolation. So they've submitted their plans, and Dr. Janine Gorham has been working through the Office of Professional Growth and Innovation to really support schools as they need it in getting those plans up and running. And so they're all set to go on August 29th and October 9th, again, based on that experience they had at the admin conference, the team planning, and the resources. And so they have their customized plans prepped and ready. So that was, again, an overview of how those 2 calendar embedded professional learning days will work. That gives you an idea of the focus, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know Dr. Gorham would be happy to answer any as well related to the broader professional learning plan for the year.
Do we have any questions? I guess you were very thorough today.
That was amazing. You're amazing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And before we finish up here, I forgot to ask, are there any other admin things that anybody else wanted to bring forward at this time? Ms. Weems.
I just wanted to ask, I guess, the superintendent and my colleagues, several of us were at Old Nation School when the Department of Ed and Steve Staples made his presentation. I had some questions, and I didn't know if we could ask for a workshop, because my specific questions were, with the verified credits being lowered from 9 to 5, does that have any unintended consequences? That seemed like a big drop to me. I had some questions about the growth model, school versus individual student, and then some questions about art as the full credit. So when can we, do we need to get because there's never been a time to really ask questions. It's just presented to us, and then there's comments. So when would be the best time?
I feel like that's kind of how that whole process has gone at
Yeah,
the state level.
yeah. So
Well, I'm not sure what questions we'll be able to answer, because I like to your specific to the specific areas that you raised, so that we are fearful there may be some unintended consequences around the reduction of verified credits. I think generally we would see that as a positive, that you would have fewer verified credits, except that what will end up happening on the tail end of that is that then students who have already obtained their verified credits will still be in SOL classes but won't have to take those SOL tests.
Right.
And so you'll end up with a lower numerator in terms of who's taking those tests. And then the students who are generally taking those tests will be students who have not gotten verified credits earlier in their career. So that could create some challenges for us from a data perspective. And then relative to your question about student growth, we won't be able to workshop with you on that because we don't understand what the model might be. We know what the model is, and it's built on progress tables, which are just built on the current performance on the SOL and then next year's performance on the SOL and any difference between those two. But it's not a terribly robust growth model. So, we would at least make the case we need a better model, but we don't know what that is yet. So it'd be difficult for us to share much with you. All of that said, we're certainly more than willing to put it as a workshop topic, and then Don and his team can come in and sort of tell you as much as they know about the changes, and we can talk about the concerns that we do have, and then try to answer any questions that are outstanding about those changes. So happy to add that as a
I
workshop
personally think
topic.
that would be helpful for all of us to
too.
understand what they're presenting, if,
So we'll give you an overview. I think what would help would be like a really good, thorough overview of the changes. Because I know at the meeting at ODS it was pretty fast.
Yeah, it was so fast.
So
It
we'll
was.
give you a really good overview of what the changes are, both to the standards of accreditation, but also to the state consolidated plan under ESSA, so you can
Yeah.
see sort of what is happening there, and we'll update you on that, and then we'll try to answer questions as best we can.
Right, and since we would be doing it as a workshop, it would obviously be televised for our public to hear. Maybe
Yeah.
that would be a better way of informing them too of these upcoming changes through the state level.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Rye?
And just for the record, for those not there, Dr. Spence was one of many superintendents who expressed many of these concerns in your remarks to the panel that night.
Right.
And, in fairness, so this has been, I should say, not opportunities to ask questions. That's not entirely fair. Because I have, through my state association, had the opportunity to work with Dr. Staples and his staff for the past year to try to inform some of their thinking around some of these changes. Some of it was heard, some of it was not heard. And so some of the concerns that I was expressing again last week were similar concerns that I've shared for the last several months. But yeah, we'll come back and talk to you a little bit more about what those are.
Yeah, and to let us know what we can do. I mean, or is it a done deal, or our venue or our platform, or how we can then, once we get more knowledgeable of how we can then try to get some of the
I think we can talk about it then. I know the state board's already voted on the changes. So from that perspective, it's a done deal. I think where most of the opportunity to get this right is going to be in the guidance that's issued by DOE, and so there's opportunities there to influence the dialogues.
Okay, so just let us know. Thank you.
Any other? Okay, so Mr. Edwards, at this time, if you will read us into our first closed session for the evening.
I move that the board adopt a motion to recess into closed session, meeting pursuant to the exemptions from open meetings allowed by section 2.2-3711, part A, paragraphs 1 and 7 of the Code of Virginia 1950. For A, personnel matters, discussion of or consideration of interviews, prospective candidates for employment and assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, discipline, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1, namely to discuss contract amendment for a specific administrator.
Mr. Edwards has made the motion. Is there a second? Ms. Melnick has made the second. All those in favor of going into closed session, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, we are ready to be closed.